Hey, nice to meet you, Anton. Let's talk about spec-driven development. One of the big criticisms that I see leveled at it is it's a return to waterfall, but under a different name.
Yeah. So I think I see where this complaint or analogy comes from, where we have those predefined steps where we come up with some artifacts written down in textual form, and then when everything is ready, then we start working on the real, code, right? This is the analogy that people bring between the SDD and waterfall, right? Uh, why is it bad? Let's think about this. Why do they think? Why is it bad, right? Waterfall had this bad reputation that if you follow the waterfall, it takes a long time before we get somewhere, and a lot of the project failed. And the waterfall failed not because of the strictness of the process, but because we were gathering the requirements for a year or two, and then the market changed, everything changed, and we didn't get anywhere into the implementation, right? Or when we implemented something, market changed, we actually need something else. That's why it failed. So you can think of spec-driven development as this micro waterfall, but this happens in a fraction of a time. And you can quickly iterate over the idea and see like if it works or not. So I don't really agree that it's as bad as this waterfall, and we have to understand where this bad name or bad reputation is coming from. So a lot of people didn't even work with waterfall in their lives, so they just read or heard that waterfall is a bad thing. No, it's not like that. You have to really understand where is it coming from.
Yeah, I completely agree. So one of the first projects in my career was in 1996. And I joined the project after they'd spent about a year doing requirements gathering just to write the bid. When they eventually got the project, there's then another year of doing requirements and then 4 years of implementation. As you can imagine, as you say, the world changed in that time. The requirements changed, the market had changed. So I think you're right. A lot of people that are leveling this complaint haven't worked in that waterfall environment and seen what we were talking projects that span 5, 6, 7 years. Where I think part of the problem is that we haven't reflected on agile as much, and that in complete contrast to that, when we had things like extreme programming, that every task should be a day or less, then we could spend some time up front defining the requirements. And I also don't understand how anyone writes any code without having figured out what they're going to build, even if the task is only a day.
That's what my talk is about. Like, you can figure out the requirements or clarify what exactly you are going to build in a fraction of a time compared to what you used to do. So that's my message. Like, you actually have to spend more time in there to get the better quality out of your software.
So I guess it's a little bit like test-driven development in that case. I'm a big fan of test-driven development. It's hard work. A lot of the complaints there are, I can't write the test first because I don't know the requirements. The requirements keep changing. And I've had the same approach to that as I've thought of with spec-driven development, that if I don't know the requirements, then my first job is to figure them out. Whether I like tests or whether I like code, that's the first step I've got to take. And so I think it's the same for spec-driven development.
Well, in a way, it brings developer closer to the domain expertise, and this is what all the experts or thought leaders were saying for years, that please learn the domain, please learn the domain language, please learn domain-driven design. So fundamentals don't change. Fundamentals become even more important now with spec-driven flow and whatever else you apply. And you don't have to follow the process strictly. You can actually figure out what works for you better in this process. And this is also the premise of my talk, that I give you the understanding, but then if you understand the idea, you can actually adopt any toolkit, any framework, any tool, any agent flexibly and depending on your needs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I banged the drum about learning the domain myself for many years as well. I think it's so important. And again, going back to that early waterfall project I mentioned, I had to. It was in the railway industry. It was safety critical systems. Everyone was speaking a different language to me. I was talking about software. They were talking about automated signaling systems and how trains don't crash. So that domain knowledge was crucial and something really hammered home to me. And that's why in, I think, 2000, when Kent Beck wrote Extreme Programming Explained, it really resonated to me when he said, have a customer on site. Because we'd already been doing that to learn about the domain and learn about the customer's railway network.
And now you can do that more efficiently, because a lot of things that you do, you can actually figure out with the LLM, and especially if you know the language. And a lot of that is actually about expectation management. So you get your expectations on the level with the understanding of the LLM itself, so that you start speaking the same language, so that you actually know and you can predict what output you are going to get from the agent.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's crucial about that is we need to, and that Extreme Programming is good for, is encouraging us to have a customer on the team and be closer to the customer. And I think that then makes spec-driven development all the more important and easier to do if we've got the customer. Have you got any tips for software engineers, how they can get closer to that customer, how they can build that relationship and involve them in going through and working with the LLM for spec-driven development?
Well, I think this doesn't change in a way. I think you still better get the customer on site. Maybe it's just more efficient with all the means for communication we have today, right? Having voice calls, video calls, almost like without the problems that we had with time zones. We still do. Time zones are hard, but not as hard as they used to be, right?
Sure.
So I don't think there is anything special I can suggest. It's just that the facts that were proposed by the founders of extreme programming are still relevant today.
And the other side then of spec-driven development and waterfall itself was, with waterfall, the complaint was it's hard to change requirements, hard to adapt to it. And I see again the same, and I think it's somewhat mistaken belief that with spec-driven development, we've invested in all these specs. How do we cope with those requirements changing?
In this sense, I probably answer it from a bit different angle. The spec-driven development name is unfortunate because naming is hard. And
yes,
someone said that this is the spec-driven development, and immediately in everybody's head, spec means the whole specification for the project. No, specification is a function for mutating your existing project into something else. It's a specification for a feature. You specify it, you refine it, you clarify the requirements, you implement it, you dismiss the or archive the specification for that feature, because if you keep it in the repository, then you either have to sync it or it goes out of sync, right? So it's an extra effort from one side. The other point of view is that, well, we didn't apply this discipline of maintaining the specs because it was too hard. But with AI, it actually is not that hard. So why don't we keep it in sync? That's also like one option to do. There is no 1-2 way of doing spec-driven development or context-driven development, because it's a lot about managing the context for the LLM. But every time I hear the argument that something is hard, it comes from the past before the agents appeared, and now everything that was hard actually orders the magnitude easier to implement. So why don't we maintain the spec in the sync? Maybe it should be the guardrail. If you change the code, please update the spec as well.
So I think I agree mostly with that. I think the difference in opinion and different approach that I've had is I like extreme programming. I've been a big advocate of test-driven development for a long time. I've always regarded test-driven development as not being about the tests, but as being helping me design, helping me define requirements. And my tests are not tests so much as an executable specification. So from that point of view, my view has always been the specification is always up to date because it's encoded and it's executable. And if the requirements change, then my tests have to change. So I change the test, and they've now verified the behavior, so they have to stay in sync.
So in spec-driven development, one of the approaches is to have the acceptance criteria written out in this easy
The easy approach to requirement syntax.
Yeah, right. The syntax, and this could be easily translated into executable tests, right? Like with Cucumber or Gherkin or whatever framework you use. So in a way, we could generate tests instead of Markdown files. I have no preference. Like for easier explanation, it's easier to explain with Markdown files because it's easier to just take a look and immediately see those patterns and realize that those could have been tests. So yeah, I totally agree.
We've kind of championed spec-driven development. I think we're both keen on the idea. What are the downsides? Because there's always a trade-off we make in engineering.
The downsides. The downside is probably coming from the fact that it's very hard to identify when to apply spec-driven development, meaning the scope of the task initially, because the models, the LLMs, are now so efficient and good that you can actually apply the plan mode in any agents and actually get the things done. But at some point, there is a drift between the plan and the implementation. And plans in the agents are ephemeral, they are temporary, they are not persisted. So from this point on, you start thinking, probably I should have saved this markdown into a markdown file. And this is the first half step into this process of managing the knowledge somewhere, either in markdown files or any storage, and managing the transitions between the different artifacts. And this is what leads you into some kind of process that you could call spec-driven development. And now it's up to you to actually come up with some kind of flow, right? So there are a lot of spec toolkits that people take from the shelf, but they don't know how they work.
Yeah.
So I think it's essential to first understand the principles and then apply the technique or some kind of tool. And then, you can get something done. But to your original question, I think there is like a thin line, and we need to develop the intuition, when to use it and when not to use it, when it feels like an overkill. Other than that, I don't really see a big downside, because it's the final result is more about the executable code itself, and the SDD is aimed for getting out the best and more predictable outcome from the agents, not the other way around. So I don't see like big downsides there.
So maybe I should put it a different way then. I think there's a challenge that I've come across. I do a lot of training at the moment for software engineers, and I started off focusing on how they can learn system development or how they can learn programming languages. And I found that with the project-based learning I take, a lot of the questions I get are people saying, well, that's great, but how do I figure out requirements? How do I write requirements? It seems that we have now got a gap in the industry where as we approach spec-driven development, writing requirements, and any agentic development, writing requirements is even more important. We have a lot of software engineers that have never done it. They've never been taught how. Do you have any advice for them?
I have an analogy from everyday life. Imagine someone comes to your house and you call them for doing the renovation work. You don't know exactly. You just see something on the ceiling, on the walls that you feel like we could paint them maybe, but maybe something else. And you call for an expert, and that expert comes in and you say, I need to do the renovation work, and you walk away. Do you know what they are going to do? No, because you didn't agree on some common things in there. And if you ask, hey, I want to do the renovation work, could you, look around and suggest what could be done better? And they are going to collect the context from the environment, right? And tell you, hey, that wall is going to be painted. The ceiling is letting the liquids in, whatever else, right? So they give you the list of things to do. Mm-hmm. And you confirm, do you have the budget, right, or not? Or do you don't like the color they suggested for the walls, and so on. So it's, again, like grilling the idea, refining the requirements, getting the list, assessing the cost of the implementation. That's it. So it's like if someone's saying it's hard to collect the requirements, well, the customer is on the sites, and you have a very good tool to grill the ideas with, right? That's it.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think the only downside I would say there is I've seen a few too many software engineers in the training I've done with AI now. They accept everything the LLM says and they're not pushing back. So again, any advice for people?
Critical thinking does not go away. So you still have to validate and check if the whatever was suggested by the LLM actually fits your needs. This is something I want to demonstrate at my talk, I hope, because LLMs are unpredictable and you don't know what kind of biases they will have at any point of time. I hope I will be able to demonstrate that the options that the LLM suggests at my talk in the live demo will demonstrate it. But well, we'll see. Like, I don't want to spoil.
Cool. Well, I look forward to that talk. Thank you very much, Anton. If anybody wants to follow you and learn more about what you do, where's the best way to get in touch or follow you?
I think Twitter is where I am, or X today. That's Anton Arhipov is my handle, or anybody can find me on LinkedIn as well, as you did. Yeah. So, yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Anton.